first 2023 DSCA-sponsored event, this workshop this year, hosted by our association. We're the neighborhood organization representing the interest of condo association and townhomes in the greater downtown area. We're happy to you're all attending. And we have a sold-out event. If members serve me correct, I think we have 27 different condo buildings represented today. I extend a special thanks to our associate members for helping sponsor this event. We really appreciate your participation. I encourage you to meet them all before, during, after this event spoken with. This afternoon's presentation is about the increasing costs of condos, fees, and the like, and ideas how to mitigate them. We have a wonderful group of panelists. We will be answering frequently asked questions. A couple of requests. Please do silence your phones. Please enjoy, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Darrin Caldwell with WrightWay Emergency Services.
Thank you, David. Welcome, everyone. I can tell by the packed crowd here, this is actually obviously a topic that is near and dear to everyone here. Florida in general, insurance, our homeowners have taken quite the punch this year. But when it comes to associations, it's kind of like the 1, 2, and 3. You have your HO6, your unit owners insurance going up. You have your master policy going up. We have new legislation that's taken. Did I kill the mic already? No. Can you still hear me? No. I'm trying to take my notes. So once again, I'm in emergency services. The Boy Scout in me, I do have a backup, so we're still good. So one of the things that's great about this is I thank the DSCA for putting, we have Dwight the Brain Trust right here to my left. They're not the cause of anything going on, but they sure have a lot of great information. They are great experts in their field. We've had a lot of questions already submitted. I'm going to ask, as we go through, this is going to be interactive at the end, but I have about 15 or 20 questions pre-submitted. I'm going to go to each panelist. I'm going to give them 2 to 3 minutes to answer, because as David said, we're going to save on time. And then after that, if you have any questions on the way in, you might have got one of these. If not, just raise your hand throughout. And Kristen or Annika will come around and you fill this out. We're through the questions already submitted. We're going to go through those questions. When those are done, time allowed, you'll be able to raise your hand and we'll have an open question and answers. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to let our Brain Trust right here introduce themselves. Casey, take your mic. Here you go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Casey Ward. I'm with Socotech Consulting. We're an engineering firm. I'm the regional director. I'm a professional engineer. I run our Naples and Sarasota offices.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Burtwell. I'm Senior Vice President Operations of Lighthouse Property Management. And I've been in the Sarasota area since 2008, working in community association management.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, can I turn it off?
Is it insured? It's insured, thank you. Thanks, my name is Mike Andrews. I'm the Senior Vice President of Brown & Brown Insurance. I'm actually a Sarasota native. Been doing insurance for 28 years, and 100% of what I do is condo associations.
Hi, I'm Cindy Hill with Tannenbaum, Lemole, and Hill. I'm an attorney representing condominium and homeowner associations in the greater Sarasota-Bradenton area. And my other law partners, Alan Tannenbaum and John Lemole, do litigation and construction work in the greater Orlando, Tampa, and even Naples area. And I'm not a Sarasota native, I moved here when I was 15. So.
Good evening, everyone. Patricia Staebler. I'm the principal of Staebler Appraisal and Consulting. I'm also not a Florida native, but I'm here for over 25 years, and I'm in this business for 2 decades.
Real quick, how many Florida natives besides for myself and one other here? Okay, excellent. We don't get together often. Good to see you. So, great to have the rest of you too. We're going to start this off right out of the gate, Mike. The first one is to you, Mike. How did the insurance market get so bad so quickly?
Thank you. All right, let me start off by saying, let's not kill the insurance guy here. I've been taking a beating for the last 6 months. So let me give you a quick overview of how we got here. The insurance marketplace, if you've been around Sarasota, trends up and down. We unfortunately are in the upward trend right now, and I will call it uncharted territory. Again, I've been doing condos for 28 years. This is the worst I have seen the marketplace in Florida, and unfortunately, I do not see it getting better. I know this is tough news, but this is reality, for probably another 2 years. So how did we get here, and how did we get here so fast? Yes, the carriers are used to having the catastrophic events, but what was a little different the last couple of years that didn't happen in the past is all of the fraud. Ton of fraud. And when I say fraud, I say roof fraud. You have people out there probably knocking on your association's doors saying, hey, I think you have some damage. Well, no, we're good, we have roofs done. Hey, I think you have some damage, we can get you a new roof. That's what's been going on since Irma, and it has continued on, and these carriers are fed up with it. Little stat for you, about 70% of the nationwide lawsuits for these carriers nationwide came from Florida. So we were broken. We were broken. They fixed that in the new legislation that came through. So I think that it's going to tail back the lawsuits, but the carriers have already left. And then we had Ian come in that was the final blow. So these carriers weren't making money, and they're leaving Florida with their tail between their legs and a tail of lawsuits. So until they feel comfortable that they can make money, limited carriers, what's that bring? That brings a hard market. These guys get an arrogant stance. They say, you take it, you leave it. If not, you probably end up in Citizens to stay full.
Thank you, Mike. Absolutely. I'm going to follow up to you here as well. What can associations do to put themselves in the best positions in the current market conditions?
Well, coming off of the roof fraud, the number one question that we get asked when we submit everything right now is, how old are your roofs? The age of the roofs and the repairs of the roofs and the reconstruction of the roofs is more important now more than ever. People that got the recoatings 2 years ago, recoating was good, considered a re-roof. Right now, no. In the condominium association, they will not take a recoating as a re-roof. So if I can tell you, and it's painful, because I just put a new roof on my house 2 years ago, I know it's painful, and some people's roofs are fine. But if you want to get insurance, you need to check and start working on your roofs, because not only are the standard carriers declining because of roofs, because they have a stack this big on their desk of applicants, because no other carriers are insuring. Then you have the state pool that's supposed to be our last resort. Okay, for people that have been here a while, people have been in the state pool. We've been in and out of the state pool. 99% of the condos downtown have been with Citizens at one time or another. But what's different with Citizens this year is they can drop you or they can decline you. And the declinations mostly are coming from roofs. So if I can tell you one thing to take away from this is, look at your roofs, talk to your agent about a plan, depending on the type of roof that you have. If it's concrete, it's painful to replace it after 20 years, but if you don't, you may not have coverage.
Thank you, Mike.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
And then you heard me. You know, it's sad to say, but we all are paying for fraud of people. You know, in life, those people that, you know, do the bad things and they always get away with it, and we all end up paying for it. Like your brother breaks something and you end up getting the blame for it. Well, there's actually roofers, attorneys, and insurance people. There's a local insurance guy here in town that teams up with these roofers, and they fraudulently scam people, and they're still doing it. They did it to Irma, and they're still doing it, so be very cautious. It's still going on, and that's what's putting us in the spot where we are today.
Thank you, Mike. Next question is for Patricia. Patricia, how much did construction costs increase in the past 3 years, and will this affect the reserves needed?
Easy answer, yes. Complicated answer. 35% in the past 3 years, we see construction cost increases. And we derive this from our work portfolio of insurance appraisals. who are coming every 3 years to us to update their appraisal based on Florida Statute 718. So we see the numbers flying through our computers on a daily basis. 35% in 3 years. Will that affect reserves? Absolutely. Because cost is going up. Here it's a little bit different. It's not affecting 35% every single trade. But for example, AC has doubled. A 2-ton unit 3-4 years ago was $3,500. The last one I installed was $7,000. That is what is happening right now. Big commercial units, Aeon units, which were $30,000, $40,000, are easily commanding $100,000, $125,000 right now. This is affecting specifically the high-rises, with chill towers, with big Aeon units, make-up air units, etc. Lumber, after COVID, went from $225 to $1,600 per 1,000 square foot board. Has that come down? Yes, it did. Does it trickle down to the end user? Not yet. So we're still waiting for cost to come down. If that happens, we all can say a prayer and say thank you. I don't believe it. I think this is the new normal.
Well, you kind of answered the follow-up here. Will that increase in construction costs go back down again, or is this the new normal?
Depends on the trade. Lumber we are following very, very closely. It's a great indicator. And lumber has come down. It's around 400 right now. 400 per 1,000 square foot board, which is a quarter of what it was at the height of COVID. Certain trades like HVAC will never come back down. Even if material prices would decrease slightly and or skilled labor would be available a little bit more. You know what? People get used to it. Why would an electrician, a AC guy, or a plumber decrease the prices when they know people are going to pay what is currently the norm? So I don't expect for certain trades, specifically MEP services, that prices are coming down. We live with the new normal.
Thank you. Next question is going to be for Stephanie. Yes, Mike?
Let me just say something real quick. So think about what she just said, Patricia, because I am seeing that all over. So right out of the box, insurance, whatever her increase is, you're already starting that percent on your increase. So let's just say you do have a 30% increase on Patricia's appraisal. Before the carrier even puts a rate increase, what we just thought was going to be horrific, you're starting that percentage in the hole. I just want to make that point.
Okay, so we're getting a lot of bad news here, Stephanie. I'm going to go to you and say, help, from a manager's point, what are ways for associations to mitigate costs?
Okay, so all this esteemed panel here, they're experts. I'm the mother hen. So when I say that, it's because the community association manager, when they are directing you to consult with your attorney, your insurance agent, and or engineer, is to help to guide you down the right path so that you can make the correct decisions for your association, which in the long run will save you money as well. I recommend that for work that you've had done, that you notify your insurance agent for some major items. For example, if you've had a major roof replacement, you should notify your insurance agent, even if you're in between renewal policies. And also too, for example, if you've had major fire sprinkler, fire panel replacement work, I would also notify the insurance agent on that, because when your renewal comes up, they may be able to ask the carrier for a little bit of a discount, unless that's changed recently. Well, a little bit. I mean, so if you have those in your that work done, I would recommend that you notify the insurance agent for that. You should also check your property ongoing throughout the year for any insurance risk items that need repair, such as trip hazards of lifting sidewalks, lifting pavers, any exposed wires that may be a fire hazard, parking garage in need of a light bulb replacement to avoid trip hazards. Be proactive and don't wait for the insurance carrier inspection of risk items. This will help mitigate different issues that could occur from that. I also recommend that you do perform preventive maintenance on common areas. For example, if you have AC units in your building, in your elevator rooms, preventive maintenance program by a professional will help to mitigate issues with the AC units. Painting your buildings. I recommend that you don't wait 13, 14 years to paint your building. Go ahead with your reserve study schedule and consult with your professionals to get that done to make sure that you're maintaining the building on time. Also to check for your water invoices for any unusual increased usage, because that can sometimes indicate a water leak. Maybe your pool is leaking, and that is also another situation that needs to be addressed. And then the other thing that I recommend from a management company perspective is with assessments. The board does take into consideration every year your costs. It's easier to slightly increase the assessments according to the rising costs every year instead of holding them flat for 12 years and then all of a sudden giving a big huge raise to the owners. No one likes an increase, even if it's a small increase, but if you're all of a sudden increasing it significantly after 12 years of flat rates, for example, that does tend to get people very upset. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to add to that, Stephanie. That was a great point there. I'm going to tell you, we're an emergency services company with 117 employees that clocked in today, just Sarasota County. And people say, oh, you're busy because of all the storms. Storms are few and far between. Water User associations, time and time and time again, plumbing and AC. And a close third is Cindy with roofing. So they're all items that if you don't deal with them, I will tell you this with water intrusion, repairs, I've never, ever, ever, ever said, hey, look, your bill's gone down. It got cheaper because you waited. So the sooner you can address it, the better. Next question is for Casey here. Casey, do you believe it benefits the association to perform the milestone inspection in the sewers sooner rather than later?
Yes, the simple answer is yes. First off, the engineering industry is extremely busy right now. We have the new legislation, but then you also add in hurricane. So we're extremely busy. I wouldn't try to wait till the last minute. If you called me and said, hey, I want you to come out and do a milestone next week, I would tell you, sorry, we can't get out there. The other thing is with the SERS. I would recommend getting that done sooner than later because it's going to allow you guys to claim. It's going to give you time to decide, do we need to do a special assessment, or we're funded okay. You know, we don't have to worry about it anymore. So I would definitely recommend that you start interviewing companies to have both of these inspections.
Thank you. As a follow-up, Casey, hold that mic. So roughly what percentage of milestone inspections end up moving forward to a phase 2?
So far, with all the ones we've completed, it's roughly around 40% that are requiring a phase 2. However, with that, a lot of times we can complete the phase 2 at the same time when we complete the phase 1. Because a lot of times it won't require destructive testing. Just because we're familiar with what we see, we're familiar with the type of damage. We're in condominiums every day doing repairs, watching over repairs. So yes, there's a lot that require the phase 2, but a lot of times the phase 2 is a formality. It's just the reporting aspect of it. But there have been some times where we do have to do a second site visit. We have to do destructive testing. We have to open things up so we have a better idea of what's going on and verify that the building is safe.
Thank you. The next one is for Cindy. I'm going to have Mike, you follow up after this. This is submitted to you, Cindy. We have building components that are due for repair and or replacement. but our community waived reserves for many years and does not have the funding to make those repairs and or replacements that can improve our odds of obtaining insurance. What can we do?
Well, that's a terrible position to be in, but I am sure that there are going to be condominiums that are in that position. I'll start by repeating what Mike said. A roof is very important to obtain insurance. If you have an aged roof and you've been ignoring that problem, you need to prioritize it as fast as possible. Not only because of the issue with insurance, but even getting in line to get a new roof at this point, to get a contractor, to get the materials you need. You're talking about months to get that process done. Going back to how to be funded if we hadn't been saving reserves, there's no real pretty answers to that. You're going to have to come up with ways to get funding, and your two options are generally your special assessment, which you impose on your owners, or you get a loan, or a combination thereof. I'm getting a lot of calls now about special assessments because of various reasons that condominiums are needing extra funds. And I will say, to the extent you might be tempted not to involve an attorney in a special assessment or a loan because you want to save some money, there's a lot of pitfalls in those processes, and particularly if you have some older documents that aren't clear on their authority. So it's an important issue that is worth actually consulting your counsel to make sure you're going down the right path. It should not cost a whole lot of your attorney's time to put you on the right path, and that will be money well spent rather than finding yourself on a wrong path later.
Thank you. Mike, do you have a follow-up to that?
No.
No, Mike said already answered that
Well,
one.
you know, I will say that, people ask me on these reports, do I give them to you, do I turn into the carriers? There are a couple carriers that will ask for the reports, the engineer's reports, just to see if you have it. And again, obviously you do your job, but those reports are going to pick out what's wrong with the building, for sure. So right now, carriers are looking for reasons not to write you. So unless it's a perfect report or they are requiring it, I am not sending it to the carriers right now. Because, like I said, they're sitting at the desk. I mean, if something is off just even a little bit, they're moving on to the next one.
Thank you. Cindy, this is another one for you. We are on the board of directors of an older condominium association that is concerned that we may not be able to obtain property insurance because no carrier will offer coverage. How can we protect ourselves as board of directors from liability if that happens?
There is actually an answer in the statute for this one to protect the board of directors from liability. It says that the board must undertake its best efforts to obtain insurance coverage. So when you're seeking insurance coverage, you need to be able to show that you're working with your agent actively, understanding your agent does not have a magic wand, but you need to be able to show as board directors you were taking action and doing what you could to obtain insurance. I think the bigger concern is not going to be board liability, because if you can't get insurance, it's going to be an industry issue, not the failure of any board director to have called the agent. The bigger issue is going to be what happens if the building is not insured. That's something I'm hearing is occurring in South Florida, stopping closing, stopping lending. I don't know details of that because I'm not in South Florida, obviously. But I hope that nobody has to deal with those problems. I really do.
Can I say something on that? I'm getting this a lot, and we have offices, 30 offices throughout the state, and that is happening in South Florida. It's happening on the other coast as well, where they're not getting limits, or they're not getting full limits. I had a call about 9:30 2 nights ago from an association out with my clients saying, hey, help us. We have been bears since March 10th. Bear, none, no wind. No one wants to write them because of the roofs. They were old roofs, they didn't do anything, so they're stuck. And I do get the question of, one, can we self-insure? We know we're not supposed to self-insure per the statute. Number two is there a cost factor in there? So if we have to go, and I'm asking this question because I'm hearing different answers, I guess. If we have to go, let's just say these people are paying $200,000 right now. No one else will write it, and maybe the only person that will write it is at the Lloyd's in London for like $700,000. What do you do with that one?
If you found an insurer who's willing to cover you, it's going to be hard to argue that you're going to deny that coverage because of all the ramifications of the building not being covered that we're hearing already. That's a hard decision to have to make.
Yeah, that's where this particular association is right now. I told them, I said, I can probably find it for you, but are you able to pay for it? Because these carriers know they have you. And so they're sitting in that boat, they're like, well, what do we do? I said, you need to talk to your attorney You know, because I can probably bring you something, but I think you're going to have to take it if I do. Because the lenders are the big ones, because they'll force place coverage on you. I wouldn't want to be on board even with that safety in that case. So.
Thank you. And I have heard from some association banks that they are lending for that. So there is a possibility. I know we have some bankers here today, so I would talk to them if that is your case. Next question, Patricia. Do we have to fill up our reserves to a calculated balance to comply with the law by 1/1/2025?
Before I answer that, I would like to go back to, we have building components that are due for repair and or replacement, but we do not have the money to do anything. And Cindy listed two solutions. There is a third. No one wants to hear. Termination of condo. And that is a true fact. It's already happening. As a reserve specialist, I'm already approached by the vultures circling over town to tell them which associations are on downhill and where they could get in to do bulk purchases. Developers are after land. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the truth. That's happening. So, and to answer the question, do you have to fill up your reserves to a calculated balance to comply with the law? No, you don't. So let's take a little example. You need 5 million in the reserves. You only have 1. Do you have to put 4 million in by the end of 2024? No, you don't. But you no longer will be able to waive the structural items. That is the structural integrity reserve study calculation. And we have done already our fair shares of SEERs, and we see that heavily underfunded associations, and with heavily underfunded, I'm speaking 10 to 15% funded. For an example like this, 4 million liability, so 4 million lack of reserves, that often results in the first 3-4 years of payments of 700,000-800,000 in contribution, which you will not be able to waive. Meaning in the first 4 or 5 years, you will be forced to put hundreds of thousands of dollars into your bank account to catch up. So in essence, you do not have to do it in 1 year. This catching up will happen by pooled method over a period of 2, 3, 4 years. That's the easy answer.
Thank you, Patricia. Next question is for Casey. Casey, the current bill requires associations to perform these studies every 10 years. However, do you foresee the associations needing to have them done more frequently due to the annual funding requirements?
So for milestones, no. We'll do this every 10 years as required by the legislation. However, for the structural integrity reserve studies, yes, I think that associations will have them completed more often than every 10 years. For example, if the initial study says that your roof has 3 years left, after 3 years you guys replace your roof, you're going to want to update the funding analysis. You might not necessarily need the inspection done again, you at least want to update the table with the funding analysis.
May I chime in here real quick? High-rise properties, and we are in downtown, so most of you are probably in a high-rise, you have to update it every year. Because your budget is too big to do it only 2 or 3 years, or only 4 years. You need to have fresh numbers for your budget every year. There are so many moving parts in a high-rise that you cannot neglect that. Spend these little fees. You never pay for a reserve study from scratch every year. You just pay update fees, often on an hourly consulting fee basis. Spend that money and you will sleep better because everything will be updated. And not only your financial status, but interest, inflation, the current cost, and you will have a brand new calculation which is easily done in no time. And every high-rise should get that.
Thanks, Patricia. Casey is another colleague. What are signs of substantial structural deterioration that you might notate in a report?
Yeah, so substantial structural deterioration is damage to one of the main structural elements of the building, which includes columns, shear walls, beams, and even concrete decks. You know, a lot of the structures here in Florida are concrete structures. So an example would be a column. If you have a column where the section of the concrete is fallen off and your reinforcing steel is exposed, that would be considered a substantial structural deterioration.
Thank you. This one's for Cindy. Cindy, our condominium will need to have a milestone inspection as required by the new laws. Our board is delaying that action, though, thinking that the legislature will change the new burdensome requirement. Could the decision to wait raise our property insurance?
I think that Mike pretty much already answered that one for me. If you've got problems, you need to be dealing with them immediately. I will add to that, some of you I know have already reached out, some of you are aware there are some pending bills in front of the legislature in Florida right now regarding these milestone and service inspections and reports. I don't like to delve too much into proposed law because we can all kind of start to think maybe that did happen or did it happen or where are we? But I will say that there is one proposed bill in the legislature that is contemplating letting a good faith cause exception to having a milestone inspection by the deadline if you have a contract to have one that just can't be done until after the deadline. So if that's their idea of a fix, it doesn't sound like the milestones are going away. So I would be planning, I wouldn't be putting it off thinking the legislature's going to say, oh, the milestone idea, nope, we're going to tank that. I don't see that happening.
Thank you. Casey, this one's for you. What do you believe will be the largest issues the associations face in both the milestone inspections and the SERVs?
For the milestone inspections, what I would recommend is that you do your due diligence on the engineering firm that you hire to do the inspections. You want to make sure that they work in the existing building world, that they are working in the condominium world, and also that they're just not an inspection firm. That if issues are found, that they can be there and consult and tell you how to fix it. The last thing you want to do is have an engineering firm do the inspection, say you have an issue, you have to repair this. Can you help us repair this? And they turn around and say, no, we can't. You have to hire another engineering firm. All we do is inspections. So that's what I would say about milestones. For the SERVs, the biggest issue is just the funding. If you haven't properly been funding your reserves, we've done several of these, and the numbers are large. If you have been funding appropriately, then you guys shouldn't really worry about it. Most associations that have been properly funding the reserves, they have the money to cover the requirements of the structural integrity reserve studies.
Thank you. Patricia, this one's for you. How can reserve studies be organized in the future to keep assessments from skyrocketing?
This will be a long answer.
I'm starting my timer. Go ahead.
So we have the structural non-labeled items. We can divide your reserves, the entire components, into two studies. One will be the structural integrity reserve study, which contains all components required by law. This is the study, the reserve study, you will not be able to waive. And we can do a second reserve study which contains the rest of your assets. So here are two decisions you will have to make. First of all, let's say you have $1 million in the bank. How much money do you contribute to the Sears? How much money do you contribute to the other reserve study? That is one of the big questions. We have seen associations, they do not even have enough money to cover the Sears. So they have to put huge amounts of money into the Sears and then have zero left to cover their other assets. Meaning, how will they fund their common elements? Pool, tennis, shuffle, landscape. It all will go downhill if that is not being taken care of. And some of these items are of course maintenance, but there are bigger items which belong into the reserve schedule. So that's a difficult issue. But we also see the more underfunded an association is, the less it makes sense to divide the study into two. If you have sufficient funds, then it really makes sense to do a Sears separate from other components. But if an association is heavily underfunded, it really doesn't make sense. We added it up, we did one main study which contains everything, and then we divided them out into SEERs and other components. And in the end, when you add it up together, you have to pay the same amount. So it really depends on the association and how much money you have. Depends on the size of the association. There are a lot of moving targets in this game, and we have to make decisions from association to association. It will be not easy for everyone.
Thank you, Patricia. Mike, I almost feel bad asking you this question because it was submitted. What is the future outlook of association insurance in Florida?
All right, so I'm trying to bring some positive light here. If I can, it's sunny outside, that's good, a little warm in here, but that's the bad side.
I'm going to work on the air.
So, let me give you a little fact though. Most of the people here are in the city of Sarasota, if I'm not mistaken. If you are, the rates in the city of Sarasota as compared to everywhere else in Florida, not just the county, not just down south, compared to everywhere else in Florida, are substantially lower. That's a plus. If you were to take your building and look at a building comparable to yours, either on the other side of the bridge, east of 75 in Venice, and any of the other counties around, it'll probably triple. That is no joke. I see them. I have them all over the rates, and that people say, well, why is that? We took some big increases as a whole in Florida, you know, after the 04-05 storm season. Remember Charlie and all that storm season? The rates went through the roof. The city of Sarasota barely budged. So yes, I'm not trying to minimize it. It is, you are paying a lot of money, but the reality is the rate per $100 worth of coverage is the lowest in the city of Sarasota as per anywhere else in Florida. So that's a plus. Do I see it coming to an end anytime soon? No, it's probably going to be a 2-year still. The guy that climbs when the price is right, he's climbing. He'll probably level up. Remember that guy?
Yeah.
Somebody, come on. No one remembers that guy? All right. Anyway, he's going to get to the top eventually, and then it will fall off a little bit. So, unfortunately, this is the biggest peak that I've seen. But eventually what goes up will level off. I don't know, and like Patricia said, is this going to be the new normal? Typically it goes down. I really don't know. So we'll have to wait and see.
Thank you, Mike. So that is all of the pre-submitted questions. We have some questions now. If you have a note card and you would have an additional question, please raise your hand and we will pick that up from you. If you didn't fill one out, raise your hand after we get through these and I will come to you. All right, the first question that we have. So Patricia, under plumbing, what is included in the sewers? Cast iron pipes for sure. What about water supply lines, copper, CPVC?
Goodness, who wants to talk about plumbing? So, is that exactly what you're using here?
That's a different one. You kept it from me, so you have that one.
So, cast iron, plumbing, cast iron.
Yes.
Life? Repeat the question.
Under plumbing, what is included in the sewers? Cast iron pipes for sure. What about water supply pipes, copper, and CPVC?
Well, I wouldn't make the distinction between those four materials. I'd rather make the distinction between what is condominium association responsibility and what is homeowners, unit owners' responsibility. So usually the verticals, the horizontals, your copper lines, are unit owner responsibility. We don't even need to talk about those. When we speak about high-rises, we talk about stacks. The stacks which run up and down, your sewer stacks for bathroom, laundry, kitchen. When they're cast iron, you have to, as a high-rise, you need to start jetting them every 8 to 10 years. If they are straight. If you have plumbing lines which divide a lot, and we have that in some of the high-rises which went up during the recession, they came like to floor 16, and then boom, the recession hit, and then the remaining 4 stories were built out completely different than planned in the construction plans, and then they made small units. So we have a labyrinth of plumbing stacks on these upper floors, and they have to be jetted even every 5 years. And jetting is important to keep the pipes from building up debris. And when you do this, of course, maintenance is everything. When this is happening, your stacks will last way longer than they are designed for. Everyone thinks stacks live forever. They don't. A lot of people also think, oh, ours are PVC. We are fine. No, you're not, because PVC is not even around that long that we can determine with certainty what the true useful life of them are. So you should really get into that jetting and CCTV program and find damages from the very beginning. When there are damages, then you can call lining contractors who are lining your stacks. If they cannot be lined, then of course portions have to be replaced. But you cannot really put an exact life to the plumbing stacks. I would say somewhere around 50 to 60 years. But if you don't maintain them, things can happen way sooner.
Thank you, Patricia. Would you do the next question as well here in front of you?
Have you done a CS yet? Yes, many. If so, what is the life expectancy of cast iron pipes? As an attorney would say, asked and answered. And what is the life of electric distribution panels? Well, these are long-lived items, and I would say for sure you can count on 50 to 60 years. However, we have seen panels go bad in high-rises, and one alone can easily cost you between 40 and 50 grand. Main house panel. So you have to have electric reserves, a base amount to be covered for certain instances like this. Windows. Well, to be complete, I would say windows, doors, sliders. Everyone is just talking about windows. It's windows, doors, sliders. That also depends. I mean, you first need to go back and read your condo declaration. Who's responsible for windows, doors, and sliders? That is the most important factor. Some associations have the total responsibility. Some unit owners have the total responsibility. And then there are some associations who are hybrid. The unit owner is responsible for windows. The association does the sliders, and I don't know, maybe someone else takes care of the doors. Some condo declarations are weird, and I really want to know what the attorneys were smoking when they were writing these declarations.
Thank you, Patricia. I think that's it on the case. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, for the structural integrity reserve studies we've done, and just us dealing with associations, we typically see cast iron having issues 40 to 50 years. For the electrical, it's typically about 50 or 60 years. And then on the studies we're doing for windows, if the association owns the windows, it's included. If the association doesn't own the windows, it's not included. And we're not including doors in our studies because that's not in the statute. So we limit it to the windows because that's what the statute says.
All right, thank you. I have my first question here from the audience.
Yes, regarding SB4, transparency here, we are from a condominium association that is 2 stories. We're concerned about the proposed, apparently the legislation that was just passed that would require, apparently in the context of the way it's written, units 3 stories or greater have to provide 100% funding of reserves and no longer have the option to waive or provide lesser savings for reserves. It's not clear as you read further down the paragraph whether units that are 2 stories or less are compelled to provide 100% funding of reserves. Can you clarify a question? And if there's a problem, do you believe that there will be some glitch legislation that would clarify that?
I can answer that the Division of Condominiums, before we get to glitch legislation, the Division of Condominiums several months ago took the position that all condominiums in Florida have to fully fund under the structural items regardless of their height. They have a website where they specifically say that in their question and answer session. And I was at a conference where they spoke of condominium lawyers. Doesn't that sound like fun? No, we were not smoking, Patricia. Where the division actually told us they had spoken with the legislature and that was going to be the legislature's position. So up until the session started and these couple new bills came out, I've been telling my clients in the smaller size, prepare for the worst. Part of the glitch bills, though, do include a fix for that, saying that it is not for condominiums 3 stories or less. So you're going to want to be watching what comes out of the legislation to get your answer on that. As of now, I would aim conservatively and be planning for a worst case scenario because in my experience when you do that, usually things work out. If you don't plan for the worst case scenario, then it shows up. Realistically though, I would plan for the worst case scenario because I don't know what the legislature is going to do. These bills are proposed, but there's no real indication of where the governor might want the legislature to go, and not to be political, but that tends to be where they go. So I hope that gives you some context. And again, the Division of Condominiums website is a very good source. If any of you have not already found it, it's got very good question and answers, some nice forms. Just if you find yourself with insomnia, there's some arbitration case law, but honestly, that's a good source if you're not aware of it.
Thank you very much. We have another question right here.
Is it possible to require the owners in a condo to have homeowners insurance? And if so, what's happening with homeowners insurance? Is it going up as high?
Yeah, well, she can probably tell you. It used to be a statute requirement that they shall maintain, and it actually went to statute that you had to take that and get a certificate of insurance, but that went away. So there's really no patrolling that. They should to maintain the integrity of the association, but right now I don't even know if it's worded in the statute, is it?
It's not. I would say some condominium documents I've seen have to require it, but it's not wording in the statute. I thought you might want to answer the question she had about what it was. Yeah.
Well, homeowners also, they're in the top boat as well. So you're going to be seeing all the unit owners in here. You will be seeing people out of the state, meaning carriers leaving. A lot of you that aren't in citizens may end up in citizens because your carriers left the state for either they left on their own will or they financially got kicked out of the state. So it is trickling down, and it's not just for condos. This is for anybody that owns property in Florida is feeling this, whether you own a bowling alley or I'm a homeowner east of 75. Mine doubled, and I put a new roof on 2 years ago. So no one's immune to this. It's going to be tough.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, I have a question. So we have a community that's 250 units, and only 50 of us are owners, the rest are investors. And I'm from Chicago, and I remember that our rule was if you have more than 60% investors, then you cannot get a loan. And I'm concerned because our community is in dire straits, and I'm afraid we won't be able to get a loan because we have, you know, what's 200 units compared to our 50 residents. I think that we have too many renters to get qualified as a condo, but maybe we qualify as an apartment, so how would we get a loan?
Stephanie, do you have anything on that? Or I will say there are bankers here afterwards we'll go to. There's one right behind you. But go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I was just going to say I would refer you to a banker. I know that there can be different restrictions on loans, but my general understanding is they are, the loan is also based on your financials. So that may be a different issue for you that way. And I can see behind you, she's shaking her head, yes. So loans for community associations are different than other loans, and so the bankers can guide you on that.
And you need to have a reserve study in place, otherwise don't even show up at the bank.
They refuse.
I have a quick follow-up to that too, and it's very weird. Citizens, who is our state writer of insurance, has a rental provision, and you probably, no one in here probably does, but on Siesta Key, if you have those short-term rentals under 30 days, they won't let you in. They won't let you in. You can't buy wind insurance. Tell me how that affects wind, but that is one of their quirks. So a lot of people are going to be paying double and triple on the islands. Those condo hotels that you see out there that, you know, that all the tourists go to, they are going to be hit extremely hard.
This question is for Casey and Patricia. You both have done CSRS, correct? You both have done CSRS. So when you were doing your CSRS, what was the life expectancy? Now, Casey kind of hit on this, that you put down for cast iron pipes, because you have plumbing in there. And what falls under plumbing? It's drain pipes, and then is it water supply pipes? And are you putting a line item for drainage? Are you putting a line item for water supply pipes? And are you putting a life expectancy on them and a dollar figure on those?
Yeah, so in the studies we're completing for plumbing, if you have cast iron pipes, there's a line item for cast iron pipes. It'll either be for replacement or for lining them. For the potable water, we have not been including those in the studies because the potable water, and we have the whole explanation in our report why, but it's typically done during renovations or, and it's the unit's responsibility. So the lateral lines that go in the units and stuff, that's normally unit responsibility. So a lot of times for the plumbing, what falls in it is if you have any type of booster pumps or domestic water pumps, those are included in it, and then like the cast iron lines.
But what's the life expectancy you're giving it?
For what, the cast iron?
Yeah.
It's typically around 40 or 50 years before something needs to be done.
What is the life expectancy you're giving windows?
Windows, anywhere from 35, 40 years. It depends what type. If they're aluminum windows, it's about 35, 40 years.
So it's based on the structure of the building, and the same would apply for electrical distribution. Is that, you have electrical in service. It's not defined, but I've been told it's the distribution panels in the building. What is the life expectancy on those?
For the main distribution panels?
Is that what you're putting in the service? What are you putting in for electrical?
Yeah, it's just to update the main distribution panels, the house panel. It's just the components. It's not a full replacement. It's just to update like the main electrical components, and those typically have 50 to 60 years.
Patricia, anything to add?
Well, just about the plumbing, it really depends on the building. Are you a high-rise, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Then when you are asking that question for a high-rise, the plumbing really depends on that.
Well,
because
the building is 21 years old, it's been well maintained, all the stacks have been jetted.
There you
The
go.
stacks are cambered on a regular basis, but we have had cast iron pipes cracking, and we're going to continue to as we age. And you know as well as I do, cast iron only has a certain life expectancy.
Right. So exactly what Casey said, 50 years, maintain, and when you see that you have the pipes is starting to crack, then start lining programs, and you should be fine.
Thank you.
Our association had a complete research study done less than 2 years ago, both structural elements and others as well. Is that any good? Does the state require us to do a complete other one?
2 years ago, we did not have the law. So the reserve study you have does not comply with the current law. So you need to get a structural integrity reserve study. Do you need to get a new one, a complete new study? That depends on your provider. If you have a good, responsible reserve study provider, they can take the existing reserve study, update it, obtain a visual observation report from a structural engineer, include it in the reserve study, and make it an official CS, which you then will have to keep 10 years. 10 years is the retention duty for this document mandated by the state. Okay, and in year 11, or after your first structural integrity reserve study year, your provider can come back, take the same study, update it, and make it a normal reserve study again. So that means you do not have to get 2 studies from 2 different providers. You can have one provider who divides it. What I said before, the non-favorable components in one and the other components in another. And a good reserve study provider will be able to deal with this issue.
Thank you, Patricia.
This is from Mike Angers. Our building does not require hurricane windows. Some people have done hurricane windows. 2 questions. One is, if it were completely hurricane window, would there be any break in the insurance price? And 2, is there any percentage of hurricane windows that would apply for a lower rate?
Yeah, good question, and unfortunately, the building is only as strong as its weakest link. That's the way they see it. So in order to get the so-called discount, which you would get a discount on the exterior and on everyone's unit owner policy, you have to have 100% impact glass. Now, it also not only gives you a discount, but it has some carriers that would have not looked at you in the past, look at you for quoting, which in turn could bring the premiums down. So people say, what can we do to our buildings, these high rises? Well, there's not much you can do. You are where you are. They're concrete or concrete roofs. If you don't have impact glass, that would be the only thing insurance-wise besides keeping your roof up and maintaining that you could do to make yourself in a better position.
What about one thing? Personally, if you have insurance, would it go?
Yes, yes. If you personally, customers, if you personally do, even if you just have it on your unit, in your particular unit, you should get a discount. You don't have to wait for the entire building. Yes.
Thank you.
We're a relatively small building. We only have about 13 units. I'm curious about the cost of the reserve studies because it seems like they're really high, for obvious reasons, I think. But can you give us a sense of what the range is for reserve studies? And are they typically done? It seems like we've got proposals for a structural reserve study and a capital improvements reserve study. And can we just look at the building and do a reserve study? It seems like double effort in some ways, even though you're looking at different components. Is that something as a panel you can talk to, or?
Patricia or Casey?
Yeah, I mean, they're 2 separate items. Just the structural integrity reserve study has to be a standalone item, just for the statute. But yes, you could have them done at the same time, by the same company. And there should be, very large cost savings if you did that.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Coming right to you.
My question is about villas. Windows are listed for 3 stories and above. Villas have garage doors and outside doors and things that are not in this list. Exactly how many of these components are part of our reserve study now?
Does the association own these components, or are the components individually owned?
At the moment, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what the legislation says, right now it just says windows. It doesn't, it just states windows for the structural integrity reserve study. It doesn't say anything about doors or sliding glass doors.
Well, that's where I see the dichotomy between villas, 3 stories, because the garage doors are just as vulnerable as the windows in many instances.
I agree with you. It's how the legislation was written. You know, if you wanted to do the best thing for the association, it'd be include everything that you guys own and you're responsible for. But per the legislation, if you meet the requirements of non-destruction type reserve setting, it's just the windows that you have to reserve for currently.
That doesn't seem to make sense.
Which shows all of us that this law was put together haphazardly by people who do not understand what structural really means. Because when someone is talking about windows, why would we only take care of the windows and leave the sliders? That's ridiculous. As much as it is ridiculous to include MEPF services in structural. When the Champlain Towers came down, we had running waters, we had electricity, the AC was running, the sewer was working, the water was working. So this is something which hopefully will be solved by this. Because the Florida Building Commission brought out recommendations on milestone structural inspection requirements. And one of the issues they want to do is to convert the responsibility for this bill into rulemaking by the Florida Building Commission, which would be much easier than following this absolutely ridiculous law. Okay? And your confusion about the windows and sliders is absolutely legitimate. And there are other items. Subfloors. Who can exchange a subfloor? Who can exchange a foundation? You can reserve for structural integrity, for concrete restoration. You can reserve money for every instance. Let's say, for example, you have suddenly you detect falling on a balcony under tiles and exposed rebar, and it's going to cost you 50 grand to fix that. Do you need money for that set aside in the reserves? Absolutely. But we cannot reserve for foundation. A foundation cannot be replaced. And for items which cannot be replaced, you shall not reserve. Because it takes money away from the real issues at hand.
Thank you, Patricia.
My question is for Mike. If you are forced to use citizens, and citizens takes the roof and says your roof is no longer good because we put a hard stop on a date for it, and you can't get a roof with the timing right now, if you have an executed contract with a roofer, will they issue insurance if you have deposits?
It depends on the circumstance. I've seen them go both ways. I had a situation where there was a project going on, a roofing project, and we were going to citizens. And it was a community, I think they had 12 different big buildings, 30 units in each. And half the project was done, people were up there banging on it. Doing the other ones, citizens will only do half of the association. They are horrible right now. Sometimes you get a good underwriter in a good mood, you might get something with a contract that will give you maybe 30, 45 days, but I wouldn't count on it. It is tough, even though you go to the story, you know, I was talking to Cindy before this, I mean, if you want a roof today, you're not going to get a roof for 6 months, 12 months, for many different reasons. So it is tough. We just plead the case that you have. But as I'm trying to get out in front of everybody right now, if your roofs are coming up to that 20-year mark, I don't care what type of roof, you need to talk to your agent about what you need to do to replace them. Because every carrier is different. But Citizens is a pain in the rear. I used to be out back in 2006 when everyone was in Citizens, 99% of us. I could go out and build a TP with palm fronds on Siesta Key, and they would insure it. No problem. Right now, I was talking to Patricia too. They're looking through the appraisals like they're appraisers, saying, "Oh, this is wrong, Patricia," or this is, and we're like, "What?" You know, these people are just sitting at the desk, just being a pain. That's what we're dealing with right now. The work is 5 times what it used to be. It's horrible.
And then we are hearing the $150 per square foot story. That is what Citizens is putting out right now. I don't know if you hear it as well. Like, appraisals coming back, oh, it's not enough. It has to be at least $150 per square foot. And I'm asking them, okay, what are we talking about? Single family, mid-rise, high-rise? What do you want me to put there? So, they are absolutely ridiculous. Mike is completely right. It's very, very difficult to deal with Citizens right now.
So I have one more question. How many, do you know how many people have been put on notice already by Sarasota County saying that the milestone needs to be done? Because we've received notice that issue letters to other people downtown. So I'm just curious as to how many people have gotten that notice.
Anyone want that one? No. Stephanie, have you had any associations calling you about that?
No, we have not, and I'm sure that we would if we did, but I think probably are forthcoming.
Thank you. And what is your name?
Casey has it.
So everybody meet Tammy. She's the first win for stumping the panel here today, so there's a prize for you later. So
We've had a few associations that we work with have gotten their notice. So they are going out.
Excellent. Any more questions? There you go.
On the question of windows, our association deems the responsibility for windows on unit owners. If through the Sears study they find that they're defective, does that mean that they're mandated to change those windows? And if they change the windows, must they go to impact glass or just change the window that perhaps is just faulty?
Someone, I only have one prize for Stump the Panelists, so one of you guys, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'll take it. No, so if the association doesn't own the windows, then you do not have to reserve for them. But if you do go to replace your windows, depending on what type of building it is, they have to be impact resistant. So they either have to be hurricane glass, or if your association allows it, they have to have shutters.
I have clarification from an attorney in Miami I'm working with on a regular basis. He sent me an email about the Senate Bill, the Dutch Bill 154, line 661 through 662 of Senate Bill 154 provide that the requirement to fund for the Sears components does not apply to any portion or component of a building that is maintained by a party other than the association. If 154 passes, all associations where the unit owner is responsible for windows and sliders is exempt from putting windows into the Sears. Keep your fingers crossed, people.
Do we have any more questions? Right here, coming to you.
Not expecting that we have issues, but are there reserve studies and all of the requirements that we have to have fulfilled now? Is the information that we get confidential? The thought about the developers hovering over buildings that might be having issues in this climate, in this downtown neighborhoods.
I think every reserve study provider has to answer that question for themselves. In my firm, I maintain a relationship like an attorney-client relationship. It's privileged information no one else will receive, period.
I just want to add to that, it would be part of your records as your condominium association, and any owner could get it, and if they're approached by a developer, they could backdoor that way.
And for the milestones, you have to provide the summary reports to all the owners, and they are submitted to the county for the local jurisdiction.
If the condo declaration makes the windows responsible, and the sliders windows, the responsibility of the unit owner, can the association compel the unit owner to upgrade their sliders if we can demonstrate that they are a source of water intrusion into common property or limited common property?
That's a factual determination. It's not a blanket answer, but potentially yes.
So if the facts are that that's an established fact, as I stated, that the court would compel it?
Well, I don't want to predict what a court would do. Let's not do that. I'm not trying to be facetious, but most of our judges don't have a real property background. But your counsel could could assist you with that. And if the circumstances are such that there is that the building windows are so old or so badly installed or whatever the story might be, that they're damaging the common elements in the other property, then yes, there could be an argument. And then, I can't remember, but one of our panelists, might have been Casey, was saying that when you do replace the windows, you do have to replace them to code now. I've been Mike, I don't recall. So you would have to put in impact glass, or you'd have to put in shutters, because you can no longer just put in windows when you're as close to the water as everybody is here in the city of Sarasota.
I'm going to ask a question to that. Is there still, it used to be if you were just glazing, i.e. I'm just replacing the glass that was cracked, can I just replace it with the glass that was there, or has that changed?
That's more of a code requirement. That's getting nuanced enough where I don't know. But I know if you replace the full window, you have to replace it.
Correct.
Impact.
And code was that you could actually, if it was cracked, you could replace it with the same material that was in it.
That goes to weight. When the frame is not carrying the impact glass, which is way heavier than the normal glass, the question is answered. You have to replace the entire window.
Thank you. Any more questions? Anyone? Oh, we're right back to you.
I guess this is for the engineers. So if a building is an older building and they want to replace all the glass and bring it to current code impact glass, who does the testing? I guess the engineers do the testing to make sure the edge can support the weight of the impact glass, because it's certainly much stronger than the regular glass. And if you have a 19-story building with floor to ceiling glass, who does that engineering study? Would that be you?
Yeah, it would be the engineering firm that the association hires. But yeah, prior to replacing all the glass, we would want to verify that the structure can hold the new glass. Because with like the sliding glass doors,
And if it doesn't?
and if it doesn't,
If it can't hold the weight of the glass, the whole building?
then you would have to look for an alternative product. One that doesn't weigh as much.
Okay, I'm going to ask everyone, even though we're done with questions, the program is not over. I want to thank the panelists. Excellent information. Thank you everyone for attending. I want to thank the DSCA for putting this together. And now I'm going to turn it over now to Jamie Still. So she has some introductions to do, and we have some great giveaways for you.
Thank you so much, Darrin. Can I get one more round of applause for Darrin and Thank you guys so much for coming out. Like Darrin's